I want to start by thanking everyone for participating in this webinar, in this workshop, and also to thank our speaker, Alexander Siryk, who kindly accepted our invitation to answer your questions. Among the participants, we have members and non-members of EUROMETAL, and in this sense, I will start with three short slides about a quickly presentation of our federation. EUROMETAL is reaching 75 years. The origin matches with the creation of the European coal and steel community, which precedes the actual European Union. Nowadays, EUROMETAL brings together 18 national federations and dozens of companies, including steel distributors, steel traders, and steel service centers. To give you an idea, around 77 million tons of steel are distributed and processed annually in Europe via distributors and service centers. EUROMETAL seeks to represent the different views of the entire steel supply chain, and in that sense, it has become a unique and perhaps the most representative platform across Europe. One of the topics of most interest to our members are changes in steel imports. In this sense, EUROMETAL regularly publishes three kinds of reports. One that analyzes the evolution of imports of products subject to safeguards and anti-dumping and anti-subsidy measures. A second one on the steel import quotas. That's the one that gave rise to this workshop. And a third one that was released yesterday in the import declarations per member states. Before giving you the floor to our keynote speaker, let me highlight a few figures from the safeguard reports. When I compare the numbers since the implementation of the safeguards, we don't have the impression that imports have decreased. And this considering that Europe, the world, has been impacted by a pandemic and an invasion that's still going on. I leave the word to Alexander Siryk, the CEO of Metals Consulting International. Alexander, I will ask you to share your screen and your slides. And I remind all participants that this workshop is interactive. So the idea is that you are always authorized to interrupt, to intervene, and to raise your questions. The slides, so I will ask everybody to be on mute up to, and just to release the microphone when you want to raise a question. The slides will be available at the end, and for those who are not members of EUROMETAL, I will kindly invite you to contact us and to have access to all those reports. Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you, Ricardo. So today we are discussing the general scheme for the imports regulations, the tariff import regulations in Europe. A couple of words about MCI. MCI is a management consulting company focused on the metals, primary steel value chain. Our service portfolio is mostly targeting commercial issues of the business, including market analysis and research, broader feasibility studies, support in various business development and restructuring processes, including M&As and business strategies development. Today, we are going to take a look into the general context of the European safeguard, how it was developed, how is it reported, how is it regulated. Then I would like to clarify some issues, how the data is basically collected, obtained, and also discuss the structure of the reporting itself, because I hear some questions about interpretations and how they get into some figures. So all the story at the current phase, because the ones who are in the business for a very long time to remember that in 2003 we had the same cycle, which was cut by the developments in China when all the leading markets imposed tariff quotas. this time in 2017, the US government started investigation on imports. And in 2018, they imposed US 232 regulation, which was imposing extra duties on import of all products. So basically making the US market as the most or one of the most expensive global markets. European Commission started a safeguard investigation just after implementation of the measures. There was some attempt to negotiate the general framework, to change the scheme and access for the European companies. So a lot of processes were there. And finally, at the beginning of June, safeguard measures were implemented on the imports from the US as a mirror action. And already in July, provisional safeguard measures were imposed and investigation was running till the very beginning of 2019 and end of 2018, when there was a directive 2019/159 imposed. And this directive is basically forming the background for the regulations. It is quite regularly updated by European Commission. Amendments are published by the official European journal. And the original quota expected to last for 3 years. And Ricardo mentioned that there is no increase or limitation of imports. It's because of the design of the scheme. Just because originally the quota was targeting average import volumes for the previous periods, and even more, it has a mechanism of growth. So we will take a look at this point later, but every year the quota is larger. But 30% points, as they discussed by European producers, so what we are talking about a percentage level of like 2, 3, 5% of annual growth for the products. In 2022, the quotas were prolonged for 2 years, and just at the beginning of this month, we started the new period of quotas, and we will also discuss what does it mean practically for the reporting, for the quota reporting, and for the status of the imports. And meantime, there were a lot of also changes. So effectively, this 2019/159 regulation got modified. So it was prolonged, changes were implemented, the regulation was amended. Some countries were included, some countries from the developing markets were included in the framework of this import regulation, because it is also worth to mention that developing countries were excluded originally from the restrictions because of international agreements. And also at the back processes development, there were also a number of anti-dumping, countervailing investigations and duties, also limiting access of specific players to the market. As an example, the last year there was investigation for deprioritized products from Turkey. So tariff quotas is only part of this market entrance regulation system. 2024, we don't know if quotas are going to be prolonged. Yes or no, there are pros and cons about prolongation. One of the arguments why it should be prolonged is this CBAM scheme implementation, and the fact that CBAM system is going to be implemented in 2026, a little bit later, leaving the markets unprotected and unregulated for 2 years. So it might be one of the arguments for prolongation. So now we are at this point. So how the data is collected, what is the general scheme? So this is amendment from this 2019/159 regulation. That is what you can see in Annex 4 of the regulation. And this is one product category, because you have a lot of product categories, effectively there are 28 categories. Some of them are not facing tariff quotas. So effectively, tariff quota is applied for some 24, 25 categories. So some numbers are skipped in this list. And from this regulation, we see what we see. We see generalized product category, tariff codes, which are effectively combining and compiling this category. And it is quite important because for some of the products, some confusion may appear because some of the product categories, which can be interpreted as carbon steel, they also include stainless products as an example. So, and allocation of the quota by country for every period. And you see already there are some modification because originally it was allocated also to Russia, but due to the start of war, all the quotas got cancelled, somehow redistributed to other members, and this is what was shown as a development. So it's the regulation is always amended and changed. So we see now the year 6 period that was mentioned in the previous slide. You see what is duration of the period, and you see the volumes for the period. Then what is also important, and also additional duty rate, which would apply after excess of the quotas. And it's very important for the data collection. There are other numbers. And another important point that for some countries, effectively, they're changing from the period to period. And some of them, they are stated in the regulation, but as soon as there is also modification, especially for other countries, at the setup phase, which can last for 1, 2, 3 weeks at the beginning of the period, there might be some issues that some data, some specification is not included in the scheme for the reporting, just because it's set up. Just for your understanding, there are different ways to obtain the data, and one of them, there is official publication from European Commission, which is supposed to be monthly, so one time per every 2 weeks. But the last release I have seen, and we are using this regulation to double check the numbers, to double check the figures, to fix the system and to maintain the system time. And for example, the last release of this official European Commission data, it was on the 12th of June, so more than 1 month ago, just because of this period, end of the previous period and start of the period. Okay. So this is how the data is reported. Of course, it's not a secret. So I think that everyone who is attending the meeting, they face this points, trying to double check what is the status of the import for the category they're importing. And over here, it's a highlight for order number 098969. It's South Korea for the period. If we'll just move one slide back, this is exactly what was highlighted. This is order number, Republic of Korea, and year 6, 168,000 tons. Here it's stated tons. And if you go here, it's stated in kilograms, you see the same number. Its initial amount, it's based on the regulation. You have seen this in the official journal publication. Then there is amount. What is the difference? And this was one of the questions which was raised the most often, because the total volume of quota, which shows this effective amount, it was growing the last year because some residual quotas remained from the previous periods, and at a certain point of time they were allocated, so they are moved to the new quota period. That was what happened in May. It was what happened in January. So there is a certain shift in the quotas. Therefore, effective amount in the historical perspective was higher. Currently, we are starting new year, and there should be no residual reallocation. It is also part of the appendix to the official journal regulations. They're setting up the frameworks for those residual quotas. There are some rules how it is done. But effectively, what is important for the data collection is that we see this amount and we see the balance which remained. Last, there are some additional pieces of information: last import date, last allocation date. This data was picked up on yesterday. That's on the 17th of July, just to give you an illustration how all the system from the regulation to practical receival of the data is working. Also, you can see what is amount waiting allocation. Okay, is it clear by now? Any kind of questions, colleagues? Okay, then I'm moving ahead. So, how the data collection is structured? So, we discussed the regulation, we discussed the codes, we discussed the periods. So, we are setting up the parameters and updating data based on the parameters for the reporting periods and for the relevant order numbers. So we need to track, and that is why I mentioned that some order numbers, they are not indicated in advance. Therefore, we should carefully check all the regulations, trying to fix if there are some changes. And that is what we are doing. Then, on the weekly basis, we are collecting all the data based on the order numbers, which allow us to analyze and make a synthesis of this data, compiling the data into product categories, effectively recalculating the regional structure of the reporting. So coming now from order numbers to product categories to reporters. So basically restoring this table, but with effective situation currently. Then what we can do, because we are also collecting this data based on the order numbers, we can also try to align this with the market, just to compile some larger groups like flats, longs, stainless steel. So this is already like part of this analysis, and also to provide not only status, what is imported in the moment, what is the current status, which is important for trader, but for example, this data is also providing certain early warning indication for the market as general, how active is import market, what is going on. It provides another interesting piece in this puzzle of the market situation and the market development. And finally, all this data is summarized and prepared as a weekly report for EUROMETAL members. So this is how it is done. And we see the screen. So this is from the report which you received yesterday from Ricardo. And we see flats over here. Behind flats, you see which are the categories which are included. It's once again, it is that you can find yourself in this official regulation. You see hot rolled coils. Its abbreviation, it is not to call it, let's come back, non-alloy and other alloy hot rolled sheets and strips. So it's a little bit shortened to make clear this is like category 1 of the regulation. And this information, this data is stated, so we are trying to keep all the records that you can find yourself in this like methodology and what are the sources and further splits of the data. Long products, including merchant bars, rebars, wire rods, and sections. Stainless steel, the complete list. And tubes, pipes, hollow sections, and other products. This is an example of dynamics. So over here you see the date for the reporting. It's also one of the questions, because maybe it's not so obvious that it's like July. See when you take a look, but sometimes I face the question: what is the meaning of the numbers? So it's quite simple. It's also the date, then total amount of quota which you have seen on the screen, and utilization rate. And here you see what is the dynamic, and you see how fast, for example, for flats, just already in the first week, a large amount of quota was allocated, and it is possible to check with other numbers which players, because it was also clear that a certain amount was just laying down, buying the stock in the port, and as soon as new quota was released, it got cleared by the customs. So the data is collected for all the general categories. This screen is more detailed for flats. So we have flats. Over here, HRC, CRC, metal coated, organic coated, and hot rolled plates. And so over here you see HRC, CRC, metal coated, organic coated, and hot rolled plates. And some, once again, to how is it called in the regulation? So HRC, we are calling it this way. So this is a long name. And here you see the split. Just as a reference, we are providing the data for the previous period. It is also quite important to give a note about, let's say, update of the scheme, because it's already like first decade of the next period, but those figures for allocation of the quotas, they face some minor updates. It's clearly what's, I see the regional data. I see that they're still allocating some volumes to the previous quotas. And it's just a reference to check. This is total amount. Here's a legend. Therefore, it's not the same volume of quota. So it is important to understand that, for example, for HRC, it's like 1/3 of 2 times smaller quota. So it's supposed to be very, very similar, but with this residual allocation, it's not the same volume, but it's quite good to show what is effective allocation of the quota. So that's longs, and here we're talking about dynamic, and we see from this dynamic how fast quota is getting used. And from this, we see like the first week already 1/4 of HRC quota got used by several players. And then there is certain dynamic, and it continues to be allocated very, very fast. So you can also check the temperature of the market and compare this with your observations, what is going on the import segment of the market. And here, what we discussed, it is also represented by numbers. And over here, you see this clear, the code which we checked for 9869. So it's 169, and it's 46,000 tons, 0.6 were imported. And this is exactly what we see over here. This is a balance amount. And also like calculation, we see by player from this table what is remaining, like for other companies. And of course, it is also because this is the most, I would say, recent data. It is possible to, or the benefit of this data is that you can see it weekly, and it indicates some weekly developments and short-term developments. But of course, the report which Ricardo is providing also allowing you to check what is the final destination of this data. So maybe we can also, in case it's just showing what was original, or what was origin of the supply of the data, just to check this. Basically, that's it about the general scheme. Please ask your questions if something is unclear, because we reserve some time for Q&A. Maybe we answered everything meantime, because how long are we releasing this report? We had already from March on, yes. Several months. Or...
Sorry, yeah, we are. This report has been issued since Easter. I guess the 11th of April this year. And okay, yeah, as a test, and I think okay, it is being well accepted by our members, and we will continue issuing them. So I will give the floor to
Yeah, sorry,
Javier.
I was sorry. Thank you. Sorry, Ricardo. The quota fulfillment are updated in a day-to-day basis or weekly basis. How is updated the quota fulfillment? How is going full the quota of each?
Sorry, I haven't got your connection. The sound is
sorry.
very good.
The fulfillment of the quotas, how is dated? Is day to day or weekly basis or just day to day?
It's flexible. So for EUROMETAL, we are doing this weekly, just to keep the weekly cycle. There are some companies who just ask for the management reporting to get it like on special date, because they release it on Friday, so they get some piece of what they're interested like on Friday or on Thursday. It's as soon as the data is collected in a flexible way, so it's a question of we are flexible in this, so we are not linked anymore to these official releases, which I mentioned. The last one was done on 12th of June, so already more than 1 month ago. So it's flexible reporting date.
Sorry.
We're just trying to keep
No
the
problem.
cycle like every Monday. We are getting the data to make it comparable, like week by week. Just that is the only intention to set it on Monday. Okay.
Any other question? Don't be shy. If there are not other questions, once again, I will make those slides available to you, and don't hesitate to raise your questions per email or to Alexander or to myself, and we will try to get back to you. Okay. Thank you so much, Alexander, once again for your time today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Javier.
Nice. Thank you so much for your speech and really interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Javier.
Thank you, colleagues.
To the organization. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a good afternoon, everybody, and enjoy your holidays if you have the luck to. Okay, bye-bye. See you. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues.
Bye.
Goodbye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.